and I think in 2002 it was more like a chain of events, which is quite funny. There was an interesting case in Germany, like a book was published by a quite famous in Germany novelist, who was, and that was shortly before the publication, who was accused of being, his novel was being accused of being like ripe with anti-Semitic stereotypes, which didn't kind of surprise me myself so much, because the guy Martin Walser always was actually a right-wing author or person who would very, very often stress this fact that the Germans had now suffered long enough for the Holocaust, and that there would be time to reorient and to be a bit more proud of themselves again, and whatever. So politics of it. But the publishing house, Germany's biggest and most well-renowned publishing house, said, no, all these allegations are false, and then Germany's biggest daily newspaper ran a short series with excerpts from it and said, no, this is impossible, you can't, this is completely anti-Semitic. It was modeled, the one character in the book was modeled after a German Jewish literary critic, and it was nasty. And then the publishing house started to mail around the PDF, the complete book actually, to journalists, so that they could have a look and see that all of this was completely unjustified, the criticism. That was shortly before publication. And to their great surprise, after having mailed out this PDF to journalists, 2 days later it was all over the place. All the blogs carried links to it. And then they sent their lawyers and tried to retract it somehow, but it was hard to do it. Even though I didn't actually want to read the thing, I put on text.com something that was called Walser PDF. It was in fact not the book by Walser, but a book by Bruce Sterling. But it was called Walser, name of the author.pdf. And 48 hours later, I had an email. From, I was living in New York at the time, and very early in the morning there came an email from a Munich law firm that said, like, okay, this is in violation of, you have this book there, this is in violation of copyright legislation, this can be fined to up to 50,000 euros. Alone for the delivery of this email, we charge you 1,100 euros. These are our costs. And we will also file a complaint with the court in Munich, because I or you, they were not really clear who they were addressing, had said in a public forum that the author of this book was an asshole. So it's kind of strange and kind of funny. So what I thought, it was quite obvious that I wouldn't pay them, but I thought, why not do something interesting and actually productive, and something that, how do I get these lawyers off with maintaining a good position, kind of. So what I did is then I wrote something that was called Walser.php, which was a PHP script, a computer program, that would actually generate the full text of the novel. And that was the whole purpose of the program. And I published it under the GPL, so it was open source, it was a lengthy program, but kind of simple. All it would do is, if you run it, it would print out the full novel. And generate it out of some complicated, it was not that it contained the text of it again. And I published that, and there were a couple of journalists at the time who really liked that, and so that became published a bit, and I never heard back from the lawyers, who probably did not get the concept at all of what was going on here. And then later on I tried to extend this concept a bit, but in summing up this whole affair, I kind of wrote also a text that kind of addressed both the stupidity of the law firm and the futility of this whole attempt to retract the PDF. I was wondering, because like one of the this is the publishing house of this book. This is German's most renowned publisher, and I had a lot of their stuff actually on text.com, and so Adorno, for example, critical theory, and then for this book, where a German writer is obviously bashing a Jewish critic, thought like, what's going on here? Actually, these people at Surkamp, the publisher, were one click away from Adorno's complete works, and so I said, there's only two possibilities here, and this is how this then ended. There's only two possibilities here. Either they're even more stupid and incompetent than even I think, or they don't care if it's a Jewish critic. Only these two options. And I'm pretty sure, even though I'm pretty sure that this actually set off a further chain of events, when the actual, which at the point I wasn't aware of, the actual intellectual proprietor of most of critical theory, Adorno, Walter Benjamin, Jan Philipp Riemsma, very wealthy German philanthropist, guy who inherited a fortune and kind of founded institutes, and at some point, it's also an interesting side story, kind of bought the rights to all of Adorno's and Benjamin's unpublished texts in 1969. He actually had Hamburg's most expensive IP law firm send me cease and desists to take down the Adorno texts that were on the site, and also wanted a few thousand euros from me. And that's then where it became interesting, because obviously I had to start another type of campaign and try to relatively offensively claim that I mean, even in the case of like there's certain that property comes with certain responsibilities probably, and that in this case he was operating outside the boundaries of this responsibility, because he had obviously not really understood the internet or what was actually on the site, and was not the numbers of text that were there, that he claimed were there, always differed. Like he claimed certain text as something he was referring to that were actually just part of they'd obviously not figured it out. And in the case of but the main argument was a moral one actually, that especially as an intellectual proprietor of Benjamin, that he now ran the risk of that actually, like in the moral sense, he had kind of lost its property by acting out like this, because since that what aggravated the whole affair was that when he sent me the cease and desist, I didn't even get them because I was living in New York at the time. So when I got back to Germany, that was actually, the whole thing was actually at the state where they weren't able to collect the money, and I had a letter saying that I should go to jail for this. It's normal German procedure. Apparently, if they don't manage to collect money from you, you go to jail. But even that letter was dated months before, so there wasn't any immediate action for me to take. People told me, our cops were here once, but you were not there. At that point I thought, like, yeah, okay, if going to jail for copying Adorno is like now so bizarre that as an intellectual proprietor of Adorno, but especially Walter Benjamin, he should rethink. And of course, this kind of, because it's also this kind of a flashy idea that someone should go to jail for copying Adorno. This was taken up all over, and a lot of people joined in the campaign to make him drop the claims. And a lot of newspaper articles were written and interviews were made, and he was approached from various sides to come on panels and debate, but he never did. He's a strange persona. He's really one of the richest Germans, and was kidnapped in the 90s because people tried to make a lot of money of that, obviously, and it's a bit for reasons that are understandable, but still like strange. He's a bit like paranoid and kind of sees itself as the main authority, and there's the world out there that in some cases can't even be helped anymore. So like, Of course, this is quite a lot of work to maintain these, or to sustain these kind of, something like a public campaign. And after some time, I just found it a bit tiring to, because in the end, I mean, I never paid. I had an exchange with the lawyers, sent out a couple of press releases, and I documented all of this. But at a certain point, I just thought like the best idea is probably to just forget about it, to just cease communications with these lawyers, and to move on to other things that are more productive. I mean, it created an extremely interesting incident, but on the long run, I don't see it as it's not my favorite occupation to organize a campaign like this, or I like to do other things. It became quite a full-time job, and in the end, I did other things. So I kind of I decided to hide the Adorno text on the site, and but at that time I kind of started to redevelop text.com as well, and even though still until today it's not finished and it's not fully published on text.com, there's now obviously the idea to combine or to kind of generalize this approach with this PDF by this German author, to like no longer publish text on the website, but actually just generative kind of things. So they've developed actually, and it's but for quite some time now in the stage where it's almost ready, is a new text.com website where I do not host text at all, but only book covers, like visual representations of the books. But I've written a computer program that will transcode all of these covers into the full text of these books. And that's quite fine, because it doesn't just work with text, but also with PDFs and stuff, the images, etc., etc. And I thought that for a lawyer, it's a bit less likely that they even understand how this is going on and what constitutes the infringement. So I think the chances are a bit better to operate without these kinds of hassles. But then also, of course, time has moved on, and to share like all of text.com is not even a gigabyte of text, so it's pretty simple to make it a torrent and put it on the Pirate Bay or anywhere, and have people download it. So there's also in terms of practical effect, text.com is much more symbolic. I think intervention is an actual resource for things. Just as a TV series, as seasons, Pirate Cinema used to have seasons, like 2 of them until now. So that means that whenever we did Pirate Cinema, it was the commitment to be in Berlin for a long period of time, a year or something, and really do it week by week, because we felt it's not just an. I mean, the seriality of it, the fact that it repeats, the fact that you can just go there Sunday night and know it's there and don't even have to look what's playing. Was the quality of it, that you and thoughts develops over time, audience develops over time. So when we did it week by week. And then in 2006, I think we were traveling too much to really do it continuously. But then at some point we started again and made another almost a year of screenings. So at the moment, and there's always the situation. At the moment in Berlin, we wouldn't have a space, so we would have to find a new space, and we would also. Probably try and rethink a bit what works in Pirate Cinema.